Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have David Derwin joining us again. How are you?
I am doing great, and it's good to be talking about this discussion again.
I am excited to have David back joining us for Grain Marketing in Uncertain Times Part 2. So I'm not sure if you guys caught the last segment. We'll put a link in the show notes. But for those of you that may not know David, he is a commodity portfolio manager with PI Financial. So we have some crazy times in the farming world, David. Are you ready to talk grain marketing?
Absolutely.
Good. So as this airs, we're going to be early June. Why don't we speak about our current environment and everything going on around the world to kind of set the stage for the conversation?
Well, there certainly is a lot going on, and we've been having some very unique, unusual times really over almost the past year now, right? And when you think back to last year as we were coming into this time, and it was dry and people were uncertain about how things were going to develop, and that dryness turns into drought over the summer. And then it just continued to roll and continued that kind of environment of, what's happening, what's going on next. And then turn over to more recent times here, and those trends were very much in place. And then, of course, you throw on top of that what's happened with, the invasion in Russia and Ukraine, and that changed things a lot as well. And now we get closer into seeding time, and we've got issues across Canada here too, where it's extremely dry in parts of southern Alberta. Decent patches in certain places in Saskatchewan. Of course, you know about the flooding here in southern Manitoba and a lot of the wetness that we're seeing. So that throws in a lot more uncertainty into the mix, but it doesn't just end there. I mean, you look at what's happened in the winter wheat growing regions down in the States from Nebraska all the way down to Texas, extremely dry and very, very poor conditions, Northern Africa. And then you throw on inflation, concerns about prices of commodities. And you've got, Indonesia starting off with a partial ban on palm oil exports and palm oil product exports. And then more recently, India with a ban on wheat. So you're seeing a lot of issues that continue to compound each other. And now we see where we're sitting at here is some extremely high, but yet very volatile. And of course, very uncertain, both production and price environments.
Yeah, it's crazy times. Okay, so I was going to get you to bring it home to Canada here, where most of our listeners are. We kind of looked around the world, what's going on. You did touch on farmers across Canada. Do you want to speak to that a little bit more on the Plant 22, how things are coming along, what you're hearing from farmers?
Yeah, and it depends on who you ask and where they are, right? But I mean, talking with clients all across the prairies from, all the way from Manitoba, Alberta, northern Saskatchewan, the whole range. And it really is a lot of different stories that you're hearing. And no one is particularly in a situation where they're coming into this saying, things are looking good, right? There are some patches where they're saying that we've got some decent moisture and we'll be okay. If we can plant, then we'll get it in the ground. We should be okay. But majority of it is situations where there's still a lot of concern. And let's start southern Alberta, where still very, very dry. And this has been not just 1 or 2 years, but it's been maybe almost 3 or 4 years in a row now where we've had some very dry conditions. And some of the comments are, maybe I'll get 2, 3, 4, 5 bushels to the acre this year. I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know what prices are going to do. I'm really uncertain about this whole environment. Just not sure what we're going to do going forward. And then here in Manitoba, we've got the other extreme where, we're flooded in many areas and we're still delayed. And people are talking about being another couple of weeks. So maybe they can get things wrapped up by middle of June. Depends. And, as bad as that sounds, some people are saying, if we get it in, we still could have a good crop, because in the past they've had it seeded late, and there's a lot of moisture that's going to be in the ground, so that helps. But overall, there's no one that's really in a position that they're finding that they're going to have some ideal conditions.
Yeah.
And that's what's causing all the concern on the production side. And then, of course, the high prices, just makes it's not always as easy as you'd think to be marketing when prices are this high.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so it seems like every year it's an interesting combination of this, that, or the other. And our earlier segment that we did earlier in the year, we kind of touched on farmers being a little uncertain on how to proceed with their marketing, right? Because of last year and what happened with a lot of drought. So I want to get you onto the show because a lot of guys, guys and gals, are worried about getting the seeds in the ground, right? That's number one. But there's so much uncertainty. And I think one of the next things everybody's going to be thinking about is marketing. So let's say you are speaking to somebody in our audience and they're going, okay, I don't even know what to do. What would be some advice that you would want to pass on to them?
Yeah. Well, a bigger picture, stepping back, essentially what I'll do is I'll work with producers, both grain and cattle, but we're focusing on grains here, and helping them implement very unique hedging strategies using options and futures that give them far more flexibility and adaptability in the marketing process to enhance what they're already doing on the cash side. Okay. So in an environment like this, where production is going to be extremely uncertain, no one wants to commit any grain. We saw some of the issues last year when commitments were made and then they couldn't, the production wasn't there. They couldn't fill the contracts. There's a lot of buyouts, a lot of costs that were associated with that. So now people are very much gun shy in this environment here too. Difference, of course, is that we've got some extremely high prices. So they're sitting back looking at us and saying, okay, I'm not sure what I'm going to get. I'm probably going to get something out of this. And it depends where you are, right? I mean, some people are going to be in a good position where they'll benefit from good production, good yields, and good pricing. But even at that, there's still that element of uncertainty. I don't know if I want to be pricing too much here. Now, you don't want to do nothing, okay? Because in an environment like this, I was just talking to someone before the show, and he was saying, given where prices are, we have to do something to take advantage of them. And absolutely. And that's where the ability to use option strategies really makes a difference, because you're not locking in any prices. You got all the upside, but at least you've got a floor price in place on the downside. Okay. So it's a way to take advantage of that, that price volatility and that price uncertainty. Okay. But because you're also not committing any grain for delivery, it's purely price protection, then you also have that ability to manage some of that delivery risk. Okay. So it's another way to manage that uncertainty about, well, what if I don't have anything? I can't price it, but I want to do something because prices are so good. So it's a balance between those two, and having some strategies that are just going to be complementary to what you're already doing is key, because some people will have priced some already. Depends where you are. 5%, 10%. I have some clients that are maybe up as much as 25, 30. And then they're starting to get a little bit concerned about, maybe I don't want to price too much more just in case. But that's where the options can really come in and kind of that next piece to the puzzle. How do you take your marketing up to a higher level in terms of protecting price on more of your revenue, but without committing any more grain? And that's what options do an excellent job of. They let you, sleep better at night, giving you that upside you want, having in place the downside that you need, and most importantly, not having to commit any more grain to delivery. So that is what some of the main discussions are about. How do we navigate through this environment? And if you don't have all those tools in the toolbox, then when you really want to reach for that saw or that hammer, it's not there. Well, you can't necessarily get the full job done that you might want to do.
Okay. That sounds good. So one or two quick places I want to go. We said, what would you recommend? I asked you that question. Now, maybe on the flip side, is there something that you would tell farmers to avoid right now? You probably answered that, but do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because you do come across that a lot where, in this environment, sometimes it seems like an easy thing would be to do nothing, because prices are certainly trending in the right direction, right? They're moving higher. If you don't do anything, then you haven't committed any grain for delivery. But at the same time, doing nothing is not necessarily the best thing to do either, because you don't want to look back in, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden prices have come back down to where they were, before the Russian invasion, before Christmas time, when prices were a lot lower, and you're going to feel like you've left a lot on the table. So you don't want to do nothing. Okay. So what I've seen is you don't want to commit more grain than you have to. And I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know there, but sometimes it can be a little bit easy to do when you see prices up at these really good levels. And if you don't have any other alternatives, then you think, well, you know what, maybe it's not going to be too bad. I got the seed in the ground, got a bit of moisture, but who knows what's going to happen June, July, August. There's a lot of growing yet to be done. And, we could see some dry conditions. So you don't want to do nothing. And it's also, when you talk about, let's say, options, because they're like insurance essentially. And you can imagine it's when, it's pretty hard to get, house insurance when your neighbor's house is burning down, right? It's expensive. And in this environment here, when grain prices are really high, people look at the options and maybe think, oh, those are pretty expensive. But one has to realize too that, say, the price of canola is double where it was last year. So you're also insuring a much higher value asset. It's just like insuring a $1 million home versus a $500,000 home. Okay. So when you crunch the numbers and you look at what kind of floor price you can put in place, it's a really good number. You can make some excellent profit at that level. So you don't want to be sort of penny wise but pound foolish and say, well, I don't really want to do something here because it's expensive to buy those options. But again, you're dealing with almost $1,100 canola rather than $500, or $14, $15 a bushel wheat rather than $7 or $8. So you are dealing with some much higher numbers. So you don't want to do nothing, and you don't want to be penny wise, pound foolish. I think those are two takeaways that I see and discussions that come up a lot, and that really help formulate a strategy on how we want to move forward.
Okay, excellent. I think those are some good words of wisdom right there. I'll give you the stage if you want to wrap up with any final words of wisdom, but really, my last question would be to you. For producers that are uncertain, that might want to talk to somebody, how do you go about working with farmers? And maybe give yourself a plug on the benefit of working with professionals like you. I want to give that call out to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think that is important, because a lot of people don't necessarily know, or they've maybe heard of options and futures, or they used it years ago and just haven't picked it up again. Or for a lot of the younger generation of farmers too, where they may have learned about it in different courses in university or college, but really haven't implemented it. It's something that a lot of the discussions, like as a futures and options advisor or broker, if you want to call it, the words can really be interchangeable. It's really about having someone who can guide you through that process. And a lot of the discussion, it's more than just using options and futures. That's not the important part. The important part is, how do you use them and incorporate them into your regular marketing plan, sort of month after month, year after year. And the markets are going to change constantly, and so will the different strategies. But I think having that flexibility in the process is key. And a lot of the discussion starts with, what do you grow? How many acres do you run? How many of your crops can be hedged using different tools, like canola and wheat and corn and soybeans certainly can, but durum and lentils and peas, there aren't those same kind of flexible strategies. And so getting a sense of just how much of what I grow can I actually start thinking about some of these strategies on is important. And then what's your storage capacity? Do you store a lot of your grain? What's your cash flow needs? Do you have to sell some in a fall time just for capturing some delivery space? Do you need cash flow certain times a year? Those are all things that can come into play, and it can make then the decisions on when you need to price and deliver your grain separate, right? You don't have to always just price it and sell it and then deliver it. there are ways maybe where you want to store it because you have the capacity. And now you can also have the tools using options to manage that, hold it in the bin, but without taking on the risk. Or if you want to sell it or have to sell it, very often, like what happened last year, there are strategies to replace those physical sales so you can benefit from further upside if you believe that markets are going to continue to move higher. So a lot of it is really just realizing that these tools are out there, that they've been around for a long time, that once you get comfortable with them, they become another tool like any other that you're going to use on the marketing side to capture the opportunities, manage the risks. And I'm happy to talk to people about that because I think the first step is just getting comfortable with it and confident in the process. And a little bit of effort in terms of learning about it, a little bit of education is key. And I have a lot of resources there that can help people along those initial steps. But if people want, they can reach out to me and we can go over how the process works. And best step, I always like being on the phone, right? So someone can call me and number 844-982-0011. And that's a great way to start the process going because, you're going to have a lot of questions, just like everyone else that calls in. Oh, if you want to also just connect with me on my website too, it's at commodity-options.ca. And that gives you a little more information on my approach, what I do. But ultimately, I think a phone call is a good way to go to really start the relationship off right.
Love it. Thank you so much, David. As you said, it is uncertain times, but there is some great opportunity out there. So I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, now more than ever, it's a great time to learn about the different tools and strategies available, right?
Oh, yeah. If last year was a textbook example of why you want to use those tools, this year is going to be just the same. And it has to do with price and it has to do with production risk. So both of those factors are key in what determines the ultimate revenue. So these are tools that can help manage that whole revenue process.
Perfect. Well, David, it has been lovely chatting again. I always appreciate you coming on, sharing your knowledge with the audience. Everything that you just shared, we'll put in the show notes. If you want to contact David, we'll put his information there as well. So unless you have anything further to add, David, I'm going to sign off and thank you for your time.
Well, I think it's all about just keeping on top of things, and it's very easy to get focused on at seeding time or when you're spraying or when you got other things that you have to do down on the farm. But keeping an eye on those prices is key, or work with someone who's going to do that for you and help you in that process. And I think that goes a long way to getting more out of what you put into the ground. Perfect.
That is amazing final words of wisdom. Well, David, I feel like I don't want to let you go, but I think that was a great short little episode and just left everybody with that gold nugget that there's options, tools, and opportunity available, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you so much for your time, David. And thank you for joining. You're very welcome. And you in the audience, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on next week's episode. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.